H3O podcast with your hosts, Jason Hirsch and Joel Rather. On today's episode, we have Mark Huelsing from Exo Mountain Gear. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed today's episode.
3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to the H3O Hunt Hike Harvest podcast. I am your host, Joel Rather. I'm here with my partner, Jason Hirsch. Howdy.
Hi.
And we are very fortunate today to have a guest with us, Mark Huelsing from Exo Mountain Gear.
Fortunate is a strong word, but glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we appreciate
Fortunate in these times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to carve out a little bit with us today, and got a whole host of things. You and I have kind of gone back and forth, not only just on things regarding Exo and what you guys do, and obviously we're huge supporters and at the same time, but I feel like there's layers to what you guys do that go much beyond just product, and I think that's kind of the cool part where to me and to us it's interesting and definitely inviting for us to have this conversation for sure. So
cool.
So first of all, I want to kind of just get some background and understand, like, you know, what is it that you do? What's your role with Exo? How did you get involved with them? And you know, kind of what's daily life for you as far as that goes?
And product development, and everything it takes that, you know, goes into launching a business behind the scenes before it happens.
Right.
So just prior to then, I met Steve and subsequently met Lenny, just running kind of in similar circles. At the time, I was pro staff for an archery company that Steve was working with a bit. So I think we first met at an ATA show, which is like a archery trade show that happens yearly.
Yeah.
And yes, we met then, kind of developed a friendship. My background is in technology. And so I was helping him. He still does own another company called SNS Archery.
Yeah.
So I was helping him a bit with that. And then he basically told me, he's like, hey, we're launching a pack company. Can you help out with that up and running from like the tech perspective website, all that early stuff. And so I did then. And yeah, it's been around since the beginning, before the beginning, how you look at it. And then over the years, just did more and more with Exo. I was in IT at a higher ed institution for quite a few years, and then just made the jump over to Exo full time. So yeah, these days, man, we've grown a lot in the last 5-6 years since we've started, but still in like operationally, and this is very intentional, but still a very small company.
Right.
And so it's one of those things where I don't have I don't know what my job title is. Don't have one.
We're not good at that either. People always ask me that, and I'm like, I don't know. Call me whatever you want. Depends on the hour.
Yeah. I mean, we literally just, this is terrible. 6 years into it, we just made our first business cards like a few months ago. And that was because we've done some shows, mostly consumer shows, because we sell direct to consumer. So we haven't done too many like industry shows. So we were going to SHOT Show, kind of in an official capacity. And it's like, gosh, we have a business.
Right.
So it's even let's not put titles on them. Like, we're making business cards just with our name, basically. So
yeah. No,
business cards are so outdated.
Yeah,
everybody's got a cell phone and a text message or social media. Dude, it's like way better than giving a business card out.
Yeah.
It is funny though. Like at a place like SHOT Show, it's kind of still big, right? Like guys are still handing out cards, and I don't know. That's a whole different topic.
The last trade show I went to, they had these little scanners, and you scan your the barcode on the badge, and it just creates a mailing list for you of all the people. So instead of handing out business cards, you just get an automatic populated list every day that you're there. I'm like, that's probably way better than passing out worthless business cards that are going to end up in the trash anyway.
Yeah. If you're going for kind of mass contacts and like getting people on an email list, that's perfect for sure.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. Hey man, it's everything. I still manage a lot of the technology, marketing, communications, somewhat operations. I'm in a weird, Exo is based in Boise, Idaho. I live in Missouri, and so I've always worked remote for the company, which, you know, again, mainly doing tech and marketing and all that works just fine. But so basically I do almost anything but build a pack.
Hey, that's all right.
So yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, I mean, like I think for us, I was first introduced probably like where I saw your packs first was, looking through some of the different platforms like, the BRO guys and various I would say like recognizable people in the industry that are wearing them, and then obviously seeing Steve out with various different folks that were all utilizing the packs, and then you kind of start to see like the functionality of them, and then really I think the next part for me was a mutual friend and someone who does a lot with you guys. I actually just saw like the recent email that you sent out, which is Garrett Bowen with Top Priority. And
oh, yeah.
Garrett lives here in Denver. I think he's actually back in Boise right now. But he had reached out to me, and we kind of started some dialogue a little bit. And I kind of said, hey, you know what? I'm like, what's the deal? I'm like, are these Exo packs all they're cracked up to be? And he's like, they're worth every penny, dude.
Yeah.
And so I kind of had started. That was kind of my first introduction, which is seeing the product, getting someone who is, used it and whatever. And then, the next step in the process for us was, all right, well, we're going to make that leap into, getting them and vetting them ourselves. And so like last year for us was the first year actually utilizing the packs, and you kind of helped me in that process when I had reached out. And, the email that I'd sent you this week was, hey, the rest of the guys that are part of kind of our field staff with H3O, I think after watching us last year turn around and like, all right, yeah, we get it. We're in, and that definitely is something that helps, I think, in that process, which is word of mouth, and then getting to see the functionality. I know Jason and I, from a testimonial standpoint last year, I mean, I would say in the amount of miles that we typically do, which is not out of the ordinary from anybody else by any means, but just in the mileage that we put on in last year, I would say like my ride as far as a pack goes and comfort and just the ergonomics of it as well as the weight was probably the best year I've had on the mountain, since I've hunted, especially in Colorado here in the high country, for almost 20 years. So
and my shoulders thanked you.
Well, it's good to hear. I mean, I would say like your quote unquote story of like connecting with Garrett and that, like that's what we want. That's what our business is built upon, is basically people who have discovered and have used our packs. Like they are our quote unquote salespeople. Not that we're trying to get anybody to sell our pack, but just happy users who tell their buddies. I mean, we don't, going back to being a small company and almost intentionally small, we don't do big budget spends, big marketing campaigns. You're never going to see our ads in a magazine or, on some sort of like sportsman's channel or anything like that. And to this day, if you go and you make any order through our site, there's a "where did you hear about us?" questions you check out. And the thing that's put in that box more than anything else by far is heard about you from a friend. And that's exactly what we want. We just want people to run the products, hopefully be happy with it, and then tell their buddies. And that's how we want to do business,
Right. Well, I think my next question is, last year, I think maybe for you guys was potentially a little bit of that tipping point of growth, potentially, by looking at what you guys did with the K3 packs. And, you can talk a little bit more about the technology, if you will, behind it. I know that you were a little bit midstream, and then the pack itself, as far as the frame, changed in the metal that you guys switched from. And I think you got such an influx, I believe, based on that word of mouth and people that were excited about the product, that you guys were under the gun last year around this time to try and get new packs out with the K3s, right?
Yeah, I mean, what ended up being the K3, I don't want to say the K3 itself, because the name's like the last thing to be done on the design, but we generally only do major updates every 2 to 3 years. And so the K2 packs came out in 2016. The K3s then launched in the summer of 2019. So about that 3-year cycle. Through that 2 to 3 year time, we're always testing. Even though we just released the K3s, we're always constantly tinkering, testing, trying ideas. And so that's never going to stop. I mean, of us is just always looking for what's next, what's best. And again, we don't try to pass it on to the consumer. It's kind of frustrating, right? When you know that you buy a new computer and it's going to be graded in 6 months and you missed it, or thinking of like how companies try and release in reality, like not be few change up. Like this year's bow and a bow from 4 years ago, there's some improvements, but it's not, it's marketing to say that it's like revolutionary, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So yeah, we keep a pretty slow cycle, but yeah, I mean the frame for the K3, we tried a new material that we had tested for over a year. It was not only new to the pack market, it was new to the commercial market. It had been used extensively in the military space and the aerospace engineering side of things. It was basically just a very specialized alloy, and it had benefits. We'd always, since 2014, been using titanium, which is obviously incredibly light, incredibly strong, has a lot of benefits. And this alloy was, supposed to have that same level of strength and performance, and allow us to shave a couple ounces, which, a couple ounces is a couple ounces, but when you're trying to make a lightweight pack, you're looking to shave weight where you can, when you can, and that all adds up into, maybe saving a half a pound in the end.
For sure.
So yeah, I mean, we had been testing that stuff for well over a year, and it was great. It was like that balance of same performance of titanium at a little bit less weight. But, there's a difference between testing something with a couple hundred people and then getting several thousand out there. And we saw some begin to develop a crack. And for us, that's just not like, even if it is, that one in a freak chance, it's like, So when the first one came up, it was, well, maybe that was a fluke, maybe something went wrong, but then, we got a couple, and then it's, what do we do? How do we respond? How do we handle this? And the last thing we want, for anybody is to have any sort of issue. So, we voluntarily just said, all right, all these K3s we ship with this new material, we're going to replace with titanium. And that meant replacing hundreds and hundreds of frames that were perfect. Because essentially the failure rate was right about 0.5% that we were seeing issues with. But for that guy who does have that happen, that's not acceptable to him. It's not acceptable to us. And so, went back to titanium. It's essentially, from a performance standpoint, no difference functionally, really. It's just a matter of, okay, the pack's now a couple ounces heavier. Is the main difference there. So yeah, I mean, to us, that wasn't a growth issue. That was more of, we do have that mindset of constantly trying to innovate. And when you innovate, you do in-depth testing. We did in-depth testing. But it just goes back to the numbers of, if you're seeing, a freak 1 in per 0.1% of a percentage, that doesn't show up when we had guys testing them extensively, but until you get thousands out there, and then you have that some sort of failure rate, which, to be honest with you, I'm not saying what any other company would have done, but a lot of people would have treated that as acceptable, right? Oh yeah, it's like a
for sure
1 in every couple hundred.
It's within the margin of error.
Yeah, it's in the margin of error. We'll replace it when they have an issue. But to us, it was like, all right, let's replace these before anybody else has an issue.
Right. Well, and like I know Garrett's told me, like how Steve is, right? Like as detail oriented as he is, and like kind of type A with that type of stuff. Like I can see him being like, no, not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Like that's not a standard that's acceptable, right?
Right. And to be honest with you, like, obviously, like I said, I've been around since day one, but being basically, and I'm involved in all parts of the business. I see what it's like to be a small business owner now. Yeah. It's really easy to get online and to throw out like a business is an abstract thing, but at least a business for our size, it is very personal. So like, when we saw somebody's frame break, like we're legitimately losing sleep over that. Like, we know that guys are working hard all year, training hard all year. They want to go out on a hunt. And if they have anything that we did affects their hunt in a negative way, like that's stuff we lose sleep over. And so
sure.
To be honest with you, that's part of it. Is it's not like it's not about what's an acceptable margin. It's like, I don't want anybody's hunt to be messed up or anybody's experience to be messed up because of something that, we personally put out there. So it weighed heavy on us for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think that that kind of leads into the next portion of it, which is for most people, I mean, a majority of hunters, when their plan, goes in place, like we have 4 days left before the deadline here in Colorado as far as big game applications go. You think of how much time folks put into what may be their only hunt of the year, or probably their most important or biggest hunt of the year, right? And so, like you said, those are things where that the end user, the consumer on that side of it, the effort, the money, the time, and everything that goes behind that experience. And it's fun. Like Jason and I always talk about like the Campfire Chronicles type thing, which is the stories and the experiences and things that we have in these circles when we talk with folks, and those like become these painted pictures of lifelong memories for folks. And in the broader stroke of all of it, you're part of that experience, right? And like when we talk about packing, when we talk about just the mileage that you put on in any given hunt, but then more importantly, what happens when the work really begins, right? Mm-hmm. The biggest difference is, how does that pack ride? And what's your, no one, I don't think I've ever packed out an animal where I went, well, that was easy.
Right?
I mean, it's never easy. Like it's hard.
Scenarios where you just wish you could kill them in camp so you don't have to pack them out.
I almost did that 2 years ago, by the way. Almost did that, which would have been awesome. But at the same time, there's a huge difference when you look at the economy of all of that. And I know from you guys' perspective, that's a big part of the equation, which is the comfort level, the customization within the pack itself. I think to us, and I know a lot of the listeners probably don't know this, but I'm a guy who's 5'10", considerably average dude. I'm 190 to 200 pounds, and Jason is 6'8".
I am abnormal by most measurements.
A little bit different,
right?
Yeah.
6'8", 250 pounds. I've got to be 260 now. I haven't done jack squat the last 2 weeks.
You're built like a troll. Is that what you're telling me?
I'm starting to look like a troll for sure. More like an ogre actually than a troll. Yeah. My hair is still a little short, but
those are things that are they're huge.
That's huge for me as a tall person, is finding something that fits. Like I said, my shoulders thanked you last year for the quality of the pack and being able to transfer that weight down to my hips. But that was huge for me, was finding a pack, because we had talked about when we were looking for new packs, to make packing out easier, because we packed out his buddy Darby's elk 2 years ago with just regular shoulder bags, and that was probably the most miserable hour and a half of my life.
That's a good thing. It was only an hour and a half.
Yeah, well, it was like
bad, right?
It was like a bear crawl up the side of a mountain. And then it was like, let's just go 15 yards and wait, and then see if we can recover, and then go 15 more yards and wait. And so, and by the time we got back, I'm like, dude, it's 3:00 in the afternoon. I don't want to do jack squat the rest of the day. I just want to sit in camp and let my body recuperate, because that was grueling. So anytime that I can find something that fits me better than just for the average Joe, I'm all about it. And so you guys make a pack for tall guys. And I fall within that tall guy realm. So that for me, that's a feather in your cap right there, just because you cater to, tall athletes. And we took advantage of that last year. And like I said, the pack fits me amazing. It rides awesome. It does everything you guys said it would do. It felt weightless as I was walking around the woods. I get back to camp and I felt amazing. Yeah. And I could get up and do it again the next day. I mean, we put on damn near 50 miles last year just walking around, and it felt like every day I got back, I'm like, I didn't even feel like I had anything on. Yeah. And I was carrying around 30, 40 pounds of gear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's going back to what you said about the pack out and how important that is. There's a balance there, right? Like, if you strictly design for just carrying 100 pounds, you're going to design one way. but you're going to make some sacrifices on how does it feel with what you're just talking about of day after day of carrying 30 to 40 pounds.
Right.
You know, because you can kind of optimize on either end of that. And we've always tried to strike the best balance of what does both well.
Yep.
Because there are trade-offs there.
For sure.
And there's also a sweet spot, if you can find it, about one system that does both well. And then even going back to height, for us, it was that versatility on that was really important. And so even as you mentioned, like fitting a tall guy is great. Like you're going to have our tall frame, but then also run it extended. In both of our frames, we have those reversible frame extensions. So you can change the frame height on the fly, which is really nice. For me, I'll run a tall frame not extended when I'm just carrying some gear, if I'm carrying that 30 to 40 pounds backpacking. But then as soon as you fill the bag and now back up heavy, that extended frame height, have a better angle of the load lifters, get more leverage out of the physics of the pack. And so it's that sweet spot of literally within a minute, you're changing the performance of the pack based not on like, you know, some theoretical benefit, but literally the physics and mechanics of how that pack's structured with your body. But it's all at the same time really simple, which is always something we go back to, of just trying to keep things simple as possible, yet add the most function in that simplicity,
right?
And trying to strike that balance.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the nicest thing is that when you really get into the nuances of the bag itself and you get it physically in your hands, like you can see how much customization the bag allows you to do so that it rides the way you want, it fits the way you want, you know, adjusting.
There's buckles and straps and more straps and more buckles. And I'm like, I remember when I first got it, I'm like, what do all these things do? Like, how do you tighten this and extend that? And then you start playing with it and you realize that it's pretty intuitive.
Yeah.
It is.
You start looking at going, all right, well, this tightens that and this tightens that. And, oh, yeah, here's the extender. And you know, here's how you attach, you know, the bags if you were to have this thing splayed open in the field and you're attaching your meat bags to it. So I said it's pretty intuitive when you look at it. It can be a little intimidating at first because there's straps and stuff flowing everywhere, but
they're all for a purpose.
But they all serve a purpose. They're not just there to make the bag look cool or make it appear to be fancy.
Yeah. So
right. Yeah. There's don't want you to try to connect this to that when it shouldn't be connected. And so by using two different styles of buckles, like the way the lid attaches versus the way the bag attaches to the frame, if you try and crisscross that, you physically can't because they're two different buckles.
Yeah, I did that.
We always try and make like even very subtle things, kind of like
hey, even
the buckles, you may want to do this, but we're not going to let you.
Even the buckles are like different sizes, so you can't fit one inside the other. And I'm like, why is this buckle not working? I'm like, you dummy, because this is for the side pockets, not for the lid. And so, so like I said, you guys, obviously you did your homework on it, and feedback obviously from your client base is probably feeds greatly into the new design on
it does,
adjusting for those mistakes you made with the first design.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean it's honestly one thing I love about our business model being direct to consumer. There's a lot that people don't understand about that, but one of the best things about it is if you are using our pack and you're talking with someone about that, or you have questions, you need support, or you want to give feedback, like you're talking to the source. So if you call the Exo number, you're talking to me. You're not talking to a dealer who then has to like theoretically, I'll tell the company. Like, no, you're talking to me about it. And so all of our customer feedback is so direct, and that allows us to like really have a good feel for who's using our product. What are they doing with it? What do they love about it? What do they want to see changed? It's just, you know, that whole quote unquote direct to consumer to us, that's more than like a sales model. That's like a whole, that ties into product development. That ties into everything.
Right.
I can't imagine trying to, you know, develop products and then sell through dealers and not having that direct connection with the customer.
Yeah. So kind of taking that and moving, you know, into the next, you know, frontier, if you will, or the, you know, what's next kind of mentality. after the last, the release in 2019, like what's, maybe there's snippets of this or amounts that are divulgeable, I guess would be the right word. What's next as far as like things that you guys are now looking on? I'm sure taking feedback and learning, obviously, which is part of the strategic process as far as how you continue to advance. But what are you guys looking at now, or what are like maybe some thoughts or stuff that's new to you guys that maybe future customers can look for?
Yeah. Yeah, not to play it up, but nothing I can say now. Again, going back to being like a 2 to 3 year cycle. Give us your secrets. Yeah, because of that 2 to 3 year release cycle, we're only 8 months into that, right? Like the new stuff was just released not too long ago in that context. So I would say in the end, there probably will be some maybe additions to the K3 line over the next year and a half, too. You would see kind of a redesign of the line as a whole, if that makes sense. Sure. There's other things that we've looked at or that we get requests for a lot that we'll explore. Like, one example is it's honestly come up for years, but we get hit up all of the time to make a bino harness, for example.
Right.
We know we can make something and probably sell a ton of them, but to us, we're only going to release a product that we feel offers something to the market.
Right.
And the fact is, there's a lot of great bino harnesses out there.
Sure.
So unless we were to have something unique or different or offered a new value to the market, we're not just going to make a bino harness just because we can probably sell them and make a little bit more money. We want to actually like create a product that's going to add some value.
Yeah.
So you were kind of constantly looking, man. I mean, I can't tell you how many times Steve and I have looked at tents or looked at even like other products.
That's a whole other podcast.
It's a whole other podcast, man. Whole other podcast. So our core is going to remain packs. I mean, it's been interesting even in the last few years to see some of the other quote unquote pack companies completely diversify into other product lines where they're essentially no longer a pack company. They still make packs, but they're making so many other things as well, which for us, we are very happy being quote unquote just a pack company. The tinker in us and the gear nerd in us is always like looking and always has ideas. But in terms of our focus, it's on packs. And even, I guess another thing to say about that is even in packs, we know what we're building packs for. So like another request we get a lot is, hey, can you guys make a pack without a frame? So that I can commute with it, or so that I can, like go with my wife on a weekend trip or whatever. And again, we could probably make them and sell them, but to us, like our market is, and our goal is, let's make a pack that's as light as possible, as functional as possible. But a core component is we want you to be able to pack loads with it. It's like, we want you to have a frame. Yep. That's why we started. That's what we want to make packs for. And that's what we're staying focused on for now. So like adding lifestyle products or, that type of thing, or just like a pack for casual use isn't, it's just not something we're interested in currently.
Yeah.
So we're still trying stuff, man. That's one thing that's, I think is unique and exciting is we're not on a cycle where we feel like we're, for investors or for anybody else, like we're trying to come out with something new to then generate some sales, to have some buzz. We're just like, we'll take our time and come out with something when it's ready and when it has something to offer. So that's kind of why things take 2 to 3 years. And why I can't give you an answer on what's coming next. Because honestly, although we may have ideas right now and we're testing stuff right now, time tells, on whether that's a good idea. Because what we're trying now could be a terrible idea if you ask me in 3 months.
Well, and I think that to take that a step further, I mean, the thing that I think about with that also, and in our experience using the packs now, is you go, well, how much else can be done? What are the other things that you can do to improve upon that pack? Where you look at the lineage of where you started, which now is a pretty good test plot of time as far as, like you said, testing them out, trying them, making adjustments, alterations, using different alloys. The functionality as far as the adjustability and the weight and all those types of things. And I look at it and go, for me. anything that you would do at this point to enhance that pack would be like, holy crap, like that's gonna be pretty impressive based on how much thought process has gone into the products that you currently have. You know, like I know we have the 3200 or the 35
3200.
Yeah, we're at 32.
32. You know, and to me, like I look at that, and based on how we hunt, you know, I envision, because I'm a guy that, you know, I don't have the brand new iPhone every single time that it comes out. I'm a guy, like, I look at my pack and go, this pack's probably going to stay with me until I virtually break it completely apart. And the way they're built, obviously, that to me is going to be a long ways down the road, unless there's a, you know, an advancement or a feature that gets, you know, developed in the future that I would say, yeah, that's going to better suit me than what I have now. Right. And because I look at that and, you know, it is an investment, you know, it's something where that is virtually part of every single day. And, you know, it's on my back a majority of every single day that I'm out in the field. And so the value and the importance of it is huge. And like with what I do, you know, being a professional strength coach and, you know, that's a huge part of my background. I've been in the outdoors my whole life, but I look at it and you know, the conversations that you and I have had about training, and I've kind of given you some background on my experiences and stuff like that, is my goal is to try and work on the other aspect of that, which is I'm trying to get people to understand the value in what preparation does for the hunt. But then at the same time, when I partner that with the product, which is, you know, in this conversation obviously is the pack, I can really make a huge impact over the course of time in a 5, 6, 7 day hunt that will drastically potentially improve the experience of each hunter based on not only better knowledge base of you know, products and things that are going to suit me best, but also preparations that include the physical aspect and all those other parts of the equation that increase the likelihood for success. And we talk to outfitters about that all the time. Like when the outdoor expo was here in Denver, we traveled, and Jason and I went and talked to, you know, various outfitters, you know, at their booths and stuff. And without question, the biggest factor that they always express to us is, what's the biggest failure or success kind of factor in that? And inevitably, you know, the last guy I remember that we talked to is an outfitter from here in Colorado. He says, fitness. He's like,
without exception, they've all said fitness. You know, everyone says, well, you got to get in shape for the hunt. And they show up and sure shit, they're not in shape. And then they're running up to camp that's 11, 12,000 feet. And they're supposed to pack out, you know, 60 to 100 pound packs. And these guys cannot do it. And it greatly reduces the success of the hunt, and it makes it a lot less enjoyable for guys that are spending $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 on a hunt to go get the animal of a lifetime. They don't, you know, they have all the fancy gear, but they themselves are physically just not prepared for it.
Yeah. I think that being able to endure for the days of the hunt, like obviously more time in the field is going to equate to more success.
Sure.
And if you're not physically fit to be able to perform for more than a day or two, or you're so sore after day 1 or day 2 that you can't keep going on, that's obviously a problem. But for me, it always comes back to that physical aspect, so related to the mental aspect of that too, because you can think that you're gassed, but a lot of times your mind is obviously giving up before your body actually is quitting. You know, you're making that choice of like, I'm giving up. But I always come back to, even in the physical training, yes, your body's adapting to that, but you're generating that mental toughness, if you will, like to endure the hard thing. And so it's like that 1-2 punch you talk about guys giving up on a hunt. It's mental and physical, but they're so closely tied together, and they in the off season, they're also developed together, in my opinion.
Sure. Oh yeah. I think that's a huge aspect of it, which is, I always talk about within our training, like, you know, giving dosages of venom so that you're prepared for the bite, right? And so if we expose ourselves, I mean, I know like last year, I tried to actually track my mileage last year. I have there's a spot that's just on the outskirts of town that has a really steep incline that's just about, I think it's like just under it's under a mile, but it's just straight and it's just continuous. And like I start my training obviously I never really quit, but like as far as like my focus preparation, where I go and hit that thing and I start to put in mileage and I start to put in reps, and then I start to add weight, and it's kind of the part of the philosophy and approach that we take in terms of applying training that's progressive and leading up to the actual hunt in September. And last year I think I was close to 150 or so miles through preparation, just getting ready for what was going to be the biggest dose in that amount of time, which was the actual hunt itself. So, and I know for you guys, like if people go to, your website, there's resources there, and this is why I kind of like this conversation, and it serves a kind of a dual purpose, which is the ergonomics of, what you guys do in terms of the packs and the products themselves really play into both sides of that. Because if you don't have a pack that fits well, if you don't have something that rides right and whatever else, like, there is such a what I consider to be like this compounding interest of misery that over the course of a week,
it's a good way to put it,
right? Like it just is going to wear on you, right? And I think that as people look at this, and then you yourself, like you're a great example, which is like we talk all the time about people that live at lower elevations and like understanding, which you do, the requirements of what it takes to go from where you live up to here and start, just digging your teeth into it. It's a big ask.
Without sucking wind right away.
Yeah, for sure.
So
yeah, I've definitely been a Flatlander. It dictates the way I train, and in some ways how much you have to train too. But guys will be surprised, if you're going out on your first elk hunt and you're coming from Iowa or something like that. It can be a rude awakening for sure. But yeah, going back to what you're saying about even how the product on our end paired with the physical training is going to allow you to avoid that cycle of misery and that compounding interest, and then allow you to hunt further, or hunt longer, stay in a hunt. Like the last bull I killed in Colorado was on literally like last light of day 7. If I wasn't in good shape or whatever, or my pack was, not comfortable to spend 12 hours in a day, I wouldn't have made it that far anyway.
Right.
And so it really does matter. But then that also goes back to like what I was saying of even in pack design, making sure that we're not just focusing on a pack that's built for the pack out, but one that's comfortable enough to get you to that point, to get you to day 7 without beating you up, to be comfortable at that 30-40 pound range.
For sure.
A lot of guys overlook that and they think, oh, it's 30-40 pounds, it's going to be okay. But there's a lot that we do in there in terms of, especially on the frame, like combining the rigidity you need for those heavy loads with pack out, but then also some freedom of movement, because you can put on some pack frames and they're so rigid because they're only built for that heavy weight that like they're restricting your movement. You're actually changing your gait without realizing it. If you're bow hunting, it's difficult to draw a bow in it because you don't have any mobility. And so for us, having that like torsional flexibility to like kind of pivot and move through the torsional for hiking, for drawing a bow, is going to be really important. And then at the same time, having that vertical rigidity to carry those heavy loads. So there's way more that goes into it than probably people realize.
Yeah. I mean, I think about just some of those key points in themselves, like, an old pack that I have, which is just a frame, right? Like, I mean, there's not much else on it. And you talk about resiliency and whatever else, like even the mechanics of that scenario, like one of the things that I always dreaded before last year is the fact that if we went out, hiked, got to wherever we were, someone puts an animal on the ground, the first order of business, other than maybe you start the breakdown process or whatever else, is hiking,
go back and
hiking back to camp to get a pack frame to hike back out. And it's like, that in the last time that I did that in itself was just a 4-mile round trip just to get back to be able to then pack back out, right? Where for me, just opportunistically thinking, it's like the concept and premise behind I'll call the technology, if you will, in the pack, which is diversifying the ability of the pack itself just changes. It's a game changer, right? And so from that regard, it's like I know now that I look at that and go, oh, well, if we get something on the ground, we can actually start getting out of here.
But to that point too, because of the packs and the way that they're designed and built, you can carry a little extra weight in the pack, so you can keep your knife kit in your bag, so you don't have to go back to camp and get it. So you're not conserving ounces or pounds, because that is not going to be necessary in that moment. But now you're able to take your bags, you're able to take your knife kits, you're able to take some additional items, because that weight is better distributed. It doesn't feel like it's there. So instead of carrying 30 pounds, now I'm carrying 40 pounds, but that extra 10 pounds is actually what I need to process and carry that animal out.
Right.
Yeah.
So which brings me to kind of some other things I think that are maybe fun to talk about, maybe a little less logistics or whatever. Is like talking about that, like coming up. I know big event for you guys every year. Death March is coming up. Death Hike's coming up, right?
Mm-hmm. Was coming up. This whole COVID mess made So but actually, last weekend we were supposed to be doing it. But as we record things currently in the midst of this COVID mess, we've had to postpone those plans. It's tough, man. You want to talk about the history or background of that? Or
I was going to say, we just kind of discuss the background, like who came up with that concept?
So Steve and Lenny, who started the company early on, they I think it might have been 2014, 2015. It's kind of become this thing, like this event, and I guess it's because we've talked about it online and people have seen it and followed it, and it's like kind of a thing. But honestly, the original idea was, hey, let's grab some buddies and grab our packs and let's go see what we can do. Not go on a hike to hike, or go on a hike to find an animal, or go on a hike to scout a spot, but go on a hike to figure out what we hike to figure out what we can do to push the distance or push the pace or whatever.
Right.
And so, this year, as we've done since then, we've done a death hike every year, and it's kind of grown a little bit. We still keep it a fairly small group just because there's a lot of liability. And if we're getting guys who aren't ready to do what the event is, it would turn into a mess quick.
Well, but give people that maybe don't know, last year, just the time frame and the mileage was what?
Last year, we were in the Frank Church wilderness of Idaho, rugged country. And it was the first year we tried to combine the death hike with a hunt. And so spring bear season was open when we did it.
Right.
We've done something different every year, and we've always purposely tried to introduce new aspects. So two things were new last year. One, it was a hunt. And then two, Steve and I had this clever / terrible idea to surprise people with challenges along the way. And
surprise.
So the year before that, for example, the year before last, we did 100 miles in basically 2.5-3 days. That was the goal. The actual mileage ended up being 95, on the ground. But regardless, we did 100 miler in 2 nights, 3 days. We had I think it ended up being roughly 2/3 of the guys complete that. We purposely each night had a point where a truck could get to us, so that, if a guy had a serious issue, he wasn't stuck 40 miles away from the end with no way to get out. So
right.
That was year before last. So then last year, we're we can't just keep upping the distance, right? We're not going to do 150 miles this year.
Right.
So we combined the hunting aspect of spring bear, and then we had these surprise envelopes that guys had to open. So basically we had groups of 3. We started at midnight on purpose just to mess with people's sleep. Everybody leaves at midnight. They had to pre-plan a route that got them at least 20 miles deep into the Frank Church. So they had to go at least 20 miles in, which obviously they had to come at least 20 miles out. So minimum mileage was going to be 40. And then Steve and I basically told each group, okay, get out your phone, set an alarm for midnight, set an alarm for 2 a.m., set an alarm for 5 a.m., set an alarm, all these different times.
Right.
And those alarms coincided with envelopes that had that time on that they had to open. So they were all the surprise challenges.
Yeah.
So like at midnight, all the groups start, and basically the first envelope was like, hey, you're an idiot. You left your headlamp at the truck. Too bad for you. You got to hike the first hour with no light source, which some of the groups were on like roads. So it's kind of no big deal. Other groups were literally stumbling around in the woods,
it's like
in
a
the timber.
Sadistic version of Monopoly is what it is.
Yeah. So like some groups were like, they had their thing tracked where they're like, we hiked 0.7 miles, but we're only 200 yards from where we started, like after the first hour, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah. The audio would have been choice, I'm sure.
It would have been choice. Yeah. One of them was at like 4 or 5 a.m. You had to get in like completely submerged in the nearest water source.
Yeah. I remember seeing
it was
that.
chilly. So yeah,
like
that was,
yeah. It's like Navy SEAL training. Just throw random crap at you and see if you can survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just don't ring the bell.
Going back to that mental component, right, of just like messing with your mind and making you uncomfortable. And
for sure.
Long story short on that one, the last envelope basically said, if you didn't kill a bear by now, you need to get out. But your penalty for not killing a bear is your group has to collectively pack 100, and I can't remember if it was 120 or 140 pounds.
Yeah.
And so most guys, they're carrying their gear, their multi-day gear, and they're carrying a rifle, and then they're adding 40 to 50 pounds of rocks to their pack because they didn't kill a bear. So most guys had to hike 18 to 20 miles with an 80 plus pound pack.
Yeah, I think Garrett's
which is 18. A good hunt, man. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely. Did anyone kill a bear last year?
Dude, no. We had one. we had one group think they saw a bear. And the funny thing was, we were in like it was. We all had a common like rendezvous point, but then how you got in 20 miles deep into the Frank was up to you. And so we had different groups scattered. We knew they picked their own route, but we had them submit it beforehand. So we made sure that groups weren't going to like the same point.
Sure.
And we were in good country, but I can't remember if this was late June or early July, but long story short, we got hit with like a hail, snow freak storm. It's the Frank, it's the mountains.
Right.
So like most groups, including my group, like had zero time to glass. Like we had no chance of seeing a bear because we had no visibility. Instead of, being up in the green hills scanning for a bear, we were like hunkered down getting out of the snow in July.
You didn't just pull a dick move and be like, I'm going to send you to a place where there's no bears, but you're going to try and kill a bear in the no bear country.
That was the final surprise.
Yeah. Like, hey, just to let you know, there are no bears here. So pack your bag full of 80 pounds of rocks and get the hell out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the guys had hunted that country, so they knew there was possibility.
Yeah. Kind of interesting question. I thought you guys did a contest, and it was after the release, and I can't remember if it coincided with, was it the New Year or whatever, and you had placed in the lumbar pack a certain number of winners. There was, if you found this in the lumbar pack, right?
I got a golden ticket.
The golden ticket, right? I thought that was interesting, like to keep that under your guys' hat for that long. And then what was the release on that? And whose idea was that? Because I thought that was pretty genius.
Yeah. So when we released the K3s, we started taking orders in June, and then we were shipping in July, and then shipping early August. And there was a lot of demand, which was good, but it's tough to physically get everything shipped, and it was obviously getting close to most guys' beginning of their hunting seasons, and so it was all hand on deck. And as I mentioned before, I don't even live where the company's at, but I flew out there and I was building packs, which was a terrible idea because I don't do that on a daily basis. And so Steve and I are out there with everybody else building packs, and I can't remember which one of us thought it, but like we should totally hide something in these packs. And at first it wasn't like the idea of a contest; it was just more of like third grade boys being like, we should hide something
Gets
in
and
this.
Shiggles.
Yeah, exactly, for gets and shiggles. And so we were just like joking. They're like, oh, let's just make it like a giveaway. Like, somebody finds something, it's like, hey, congrats.
Right.
And so we did it. So we took 5 stickers, and as you mentioned, like behind the lumbar pad, there's this lumbar shim or lumbar insert, and these circle stickers were sitting there. We took 5 of them. and we wrote like, "You're a winner" on it. And then both Steve and I signed it, and we stuffed them in literally this massive box that had like thousands of them in there. So it wasn't even in like a pack. We were just processing that part of the pack at that time. And we threw it in a box with like thousands. So we had no idea when they were getting shipped or who they were getting shipped to, or we literally had no idea what happened to them. And then we also didn't have a plan for it. Yeah, we didn't have a plan for it. So we were like, yeah, you're a winner, but I don't even know what the prize is. And we just did it and kind of forgot about it. And then it got to be like September, October. And then one guy emailed me and he was like, "Hey, I found this in my pack. What does this mean?" And he sends me a picture. And it said like second place, and then it had like my signature on it. And I was like, stand by, I'll get back to you. I don't know what that means. And so we kind of like, oh crap, we got to do something to giveaway. Only that guy had found one, and there was 5 out there. And long story short, we decided, all right, for Christmas, literally on Christmas Day, we're going to send out an email with a video to the people who had bought K3 packs and be like, "Hey, Merry Christmas, blah, blah, blah. By the way, check your pack. You may have won prizes." And so we had 5 different prizes, everything from like a brand new Hoyt bow, and they got to pick their own model.
Yeah.
That was the first place prize. And then we had like some super cool custom knives and stuff. So it was just kind of a on the fly, fun thing. It ended up being cool at Christmas time just to say thanks to anybody who, "Hey, thanks for supporting us this year. Here's
I thought it was awesome.
Were all 5 redeemed?
No, and they still haven't been.
So now I got to check my pack.
I did.
So check your pack.
I did check mine. Because I was like, huh.
Did the number 1 get redeemed? First place?
It did. So the first place prize was, that was the bow, and there was something else with it. And then second place prize was like a $500 gift card to SNS Archery and something with that. I forget what. So there was 1 first place prize, 2 second, and 2 third. The third place prize was a custom. Actually, I have one sitting up here. It was a custom Benchmade knife, like with our logo on it.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And then a custom. We work with a guy who's actually out in Colorado who makes holsters for our packs. It was one of those. So yeah, there's if anybody finds a third place that hasn't been claimed, I can send you one of these knives.
Is that the knife you're supposed to send out? You've just been using it?
No, I have another one. There's another one sitting over there. It's used, but it's bloody. I'll send it to you. So they haven't been claimed yet.
Now
so
I'm gonna have to go look for it.
Yeah, go look if you haven't yet.
Yeah, I was not a winner, but anyway, I definitely won in other regards with the pack. So, but
good.
Anyhow, well, can I kind of wrap things up here? And I don't want to take a much more of your time, but I know for anybody that's listening, if they don't know, you guys obviously have your own podcast. We want to make sure that the amount of information that you guys have on there is awesome. I mean, it's not just talking about packs and what you guys do, but it has a huge variety of things from hunting tactics, and I know you guys even talk about some training based stuff on there. So where do people find you guys' podcast?
Yeah, it's just called the Hunt Backcountry Podcast. You can go to exomountaingear.com/podcast, or it should be pretty much everywhere. iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all those places. Just search Hunt Backcountry, and it should come up. And yeah, I mean, we, Steve and I put that out, but as you mentioned, we don't make it really about the company very much, or just talk about packs. It's really, going back to, I think 2015, Steve and I were just like, man, we know a lot of cool people in the industry and have these cool conversations. It'd be cool to be a fly on the wall or have other people being a fly on the wall. And so that's kind of the original intent, was like talking to people that we knew that honestly that we were learning from and asking them the questions that we wanted to learn.
Right.
And that's still a huge part of it. Is it's not about what I have to say or what Steve has to say. It's more about getting really interesting people on the show and then asking them the questions that we're interested, because Steve and I continue just to want to learn as hunters, and whether it's new species, new tactics, new whatever, that's always beneficial. We do talk about gear right now with the COVID thing. We've been doing a bunch of like listener Q&A episodes, so there's definitely a big mix. It's not just a single thing. I mean, we talk bow stuff, rifle stuff, deer, elk, other species, and like to get different people on.
Yeah. Nice. Favorite thing for you to hunt?
The next one. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard. It's hard to beat September in the Elkwoods for sure. Like that whole pursuit and challenge and like the whole vocal interaction is something that I can't get over. Yeah. But the only thing I like more than that is like the anticipation of what's next. And so whether that's a new state or a new species or whatever, like that's, man, I could hunt elk for the rest of my life and be happy, but I could also hunt all kinds of different stuff and just like continue to have new experiences. And that's all for me. The hunting is all about the experience. And hopefully that ends with some meat in the freezer and antlers on the wall. But man, it's the experience. Like I was crazy fortunate to go to Alaska for the first time this past fall. And so hunting, like say Sitka black-tailed deer on Kodiak Island,
doesn't suck.
Like, yeah, it doesn't suck, man. So yeah, whatever's next is my favorite.
Awesome. That's a perfect answer from someone who's, I think, a lot like us, which is they're like, what do you like hunting? And I'm like, anything I can go hunt is perfectly fine with me right now. Like, right. I mean, we're really bummed right now, just even on restrictions with like turkey hunting. I was getting really amped up to get out, and Jason and I have a lot of tremendous connections here in Nebraska, even in Kansas and stuff like that. And like I just was looking at the recent update from the Department of Wildlife, and they're saying that like Nebraska, for example, which is where I grew up, they're not selling any out-of-state tags anymore. Like unless you have one, you can't even access a tag, which means like I couldn't even go home, and like one of our field guys that's part of H3O, he lives back there. He's kind of like my go-to because he always gets a chance to see everything in and around there, and all it is for me is I got to just jump in the car and get home, and we can be out getting after it right away. And now that's off the table, so it's kind of a bummer. But Jason, do you have anything else?
Are they restricting people in the woods here in Colorado too to just Coloradans?
I don't know. I don't know how you guys were. There was a huge hoax on April Fool's Day. I think a ton of hunters were trying to tell people that they couldn't apply for tags in Colorado. So.
Yeah, there was hoax going around recently.
CPW sent out an email about it. They're like, this was a hoax. We are still selling stuff. There is still a season that's coming.
Yeah. I mean, there's some real stuff, though. I mean, I did see the Nebraska thing with the non-resident, but in Alaska, they canceled their spring bear seasons completely, even for residents.
Really?
Yeah, which when, first I was like, that seems crazy, but it's so different in Alaska because even resident hunters travel a lot to hunts, sure. They're flying out to remote places, and just having been up there a couple times now, looking at how it's structured, there's all these remote villages that guys would travel through. So the idea of people potentially bringing COVID into these remote areas that haven't been exposed to it yet and then don't have good medical care, like I can kind of see why they did it. But it is crazy to think, like, even for a resident, man, like in your own state, you can't even go hunt what was, just a standard season. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah. Well, we're all, I think, hopeful. We jokingly have said we hope that it would have been nice had this been in September, and I could have taken the month off to just hunt. But,
right.
Now, even with the heightened awareness and sensitivity to it, now our hope is that this thing levels out and we get a chance to hunt. So.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I hope so. But well, Mark, I greatly appreciate your time. You've been really responsive, as you said, as a small company. I think it's nice to get on the phone with you because we've exchanged so many kind of emails and texts and things like that. And I appreciate your help as far as like however many questions or things I've probably hounded you about in the last year or so. It's always good to get an opportunity to connect with people more on maybe a personal level, even though we've kind of really interacted on a professional level as far as me wanting to learn and get to know more about you guys. So I appreciate your time.
You bet, man. Glad to do it.
Yeah, thanks, dude. We appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a great day. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you tuning in. Please leave your comments, questions, anything like that below for us or for Mark. Check in, our podcast and future podcasts, as well as the Hunt the Country podcast as well with them, because there's a lot of great info and a lot of great people out there trying to put out information for everyone. So thanks, Mark. Have a great day.
See ya.